Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
Taylor Swift is a link builder. There were rumors that she would get engaged. Our client said, let's give them a free wedding venue. And then we got them 50 links. That's digital PR.
Managing multiple clients or large websites? Automate your SEO with Ali AI. Start your free trial now.
Okay, so can everyone hear me okay? All right, so this is going to be, I'm going to try and make a topic that's maybe seen as a little bit uninteresting, interesting. So let's go. So I'm covering top 10 consent mode mistakes to avoid. Quick bit about myself. I'm Phil Pearce, Analytics Director and founder at MeasureMinds. So we do Google Analytics GTM for large enterprises, and we've been doing it for way too long. Also, you can find my book on Amazon for the GTM Developer Guide, or email me and I can send you a free copy. Fun fact you might be interested to know, my wife, who's in the audience here, is Colombian. So we met in New York, and we actually have a house in Colombia. We've been building over COVID over the last 3 years. There's a picture of it just here. So if my analytics career goes completely pear-shaped, don't worry, I've got a fallback plan. I'll just become a Colombian drug lord. So we'll see how things go. Hopefully I'm all right at the moment as an analyst, but back up. So we're going to cover top 10 mistakes to avoid, just some terminology stuff first to begin with, then we're going to jump into the kind of the mistakes and the gotchas and the saving your bacon stuff. There is actually, because it's Brighton, I don't have any fish and chips, but we've got some takeaways. So there's some printouts we will distribute at the front for where you can basically go through a checklist and see if these 10 things apply to you. And maybe when you get back in the office, you can check them and cross them off. That's also the QR code there. We've got a free to attend GTM event for one whole day that's completely free in 2 weeks' time about GTM templates. Scan that and you'll go to a LinkedIn page and you'll find out more about that in 2 weeks. That's part of GTM Forward. Consent mode modeling. So what is consent mode modeling? If you see the little amber bar on the side here, this is your kind of count of sessions. This is your real data, but your model data is the kind of extra 10 to 20%. It's the people that click deny, don't track me. The problem is you need both. You need the 80% and the 10% to get to your 100%, your kind of more accurate data and your normalized data. If you miss off this bit, you're really shooting yourself in the foot and you're going to underreport. So it's really all about benchmarking and making sure you don't undercount. Bear in mind, over time, more people and more users have been aware of cookie banners and opt-ins and opt-outs. So there's been a decline in opt-ins and obviously an increase in opt-outs over a long period of time. So you can't just, if you looked at like Analytics 4 or Analytics 3 when it was around and just did a long time period, you will see, even on a static line, you'll see it going downwards because of those opt-outs. Here, good example to check that, if you count your Google CPC clicks and compare them against your Google CPC sessions in Google Analytics, bear in mind you can't block the CPC clicks because the redirect, you can kind of see what that missing amount is. So when we talk about modeling, we're really talking about comparing that difference and what you're missing. Here's a Looker Studio report. You can see that difference with kind of like the data from GA4 and Search Console. The other thing is a kind of operating system change. Obviously, the market shifted when iOS 14 rolled out. Facebook shifted from an opt-out model, opt-in model to opt-out, and you've got this kind of 90% like delta change, as in users were like, "Do you want to be tracked? No, thanks." So the same also happened with the methodology change with the ICO, where they shifted to a opt-out model, where previously, opt-in model, and you again got this massive drop and this step change. So if like Apple does something crazy, we need a mechanism to keep that benchmark stable and allow for a a safe kind of delta. So when you hear modeling, what you're really talking about is upscaling. I'm just going to cover the terminology bit a little bit. Is there anyone from Google in the room, by the way? No? Good, because I'm just going to take the mick out of you. Google called the Google tag, what they really should have called it is the simple TMS mode. Google's terrible at naming stuff. The same with modeling, really, it's talking about upscaling. And when you see advanced mode, just think upscaling on. It's really that simple. I don't know why they called it advanced mode, just to confuse people, I don't know. And don't get me saucy about conversions and key events and all that craziness. So anyway, Google, just for God's sake, keep it simple, please. The other change that has happened as part of consent mode is consent mode v2. What is that? It's 2 new fields, add personalization and add user data. So these 2 you can see here. What that meant is the cookie management platform, so these are the OneTrust, the User-Centrics, TrustArc, they needed to add these 2 new fields into their cookie banners. So it's like 2 extra things for users to decide about. And they also needed to update their GTM community templates to account for these 2 new things. Problem is, it's actually quite difficult pushing a change to an existing GTM template. Simo did this and caused a breaking change with his template and really confused a lot of people. So the CMPs were like, yeah, we could push out a breaking change, and we could completely refactor our banner designs and our back end, etc. Or we could just do nothing and map ad storage to these 2 new fields. Guess what they did? No surprise at all. They went for the easy option. So consent mode v2 versus v1, really nothing has changed between the 2, because ad storage generally means these 2 extra fields because you can't change them in most CMPs. The one thing that has changed, you do need to update your GTM templates to add those 2 new fields in. If you don't, you will get warnings in Google Analytics interface and Google Ads, etc., about missing fields, and remarketing may stop working, and conversion importing, etc., may also stop working. The other thing is, what is basic mode and what is advanced mode? Basic mode is really is based off the industry category. It's kind of like saying, do you want less conversions or more conversions? Advanced mode is based off your data about people that click decline. So which one do you want? Do you want less or more? Anyone want less conversions? Yeah? Going for basic mode, yeah? Okay, so most people, obviously, you want the advanced mode. You're going to get more upscaling, that extra kind of 20%, even 40% that was mentioned before. It's like, why would you want less conversions? It's like completely nuts. Well, there is some instances where some countries where you have to use basic mode, rather annoyingly, and Kira mentioned it in her slides. So there's about 4 areas where you have to use basic mode. One would be if the man from the DPO, Monty, says, no, you can't use cookieless pings, sorry. Or you're in one of these countries down here that says Google Analytics 4 is illegal. Now, for me, there are ways of changing Google Analytics. So you hide IP addresses, host it in GTM, use GTM server side, host it locally. So there's ways of kind of technically getting around these problems. And Chrome at some point next year is going to introduce IP anonymization, which exists in Safari already. So that will actually mitigate some of these problems. So although it's kind of legal-ish, hopefully in a few months' time, it will be seen as legal. So obviously my Google Analytics hat on, I'm hoping you don't need to change to the Matomo, and the browsers, i.e. Chrome and Google, fix this problem by hashing IPs. Because let's face it, you don't need an IP address after the lookup's been done. You've got the country and city. There is this debate about California, whether IPs are illegal or not, and I'm going to go into that in more detail in a moment. The other thing is, you're a very small site. You may not have enough volume to trigger the threshold to get that consent mode active, i.e. you don't have enough traffic. So those are the 4 things that mean you can't use advanced mode. Hopefully that's not you, and you can turn on advanced mode and it does kick in. And you got a yes from the man from the DPO. So great, you've got advanced mode, you're allowed to use it and activate upscaling. Woo! So great, but what could go wrong with advanced mode? A lot. It's a very complex system, lots of moving parts, CMSs, CMPs, configuration settings. It's like a massive kind of engineering piece in itself and put together over a long period of time. So here's the 10 checklists. So I don't know if you want to just give out the little paper checklist. So you can mark these on if you've got a pen handy, or if you go to the MeasureFest Twitter account, we've listed the slides and the handouts. The first one is don't use a generic HTML template to deploy a CMP. So in this case, we've got a cookie bot. The reason for that is you won't get the updates. So the 2 new fields, for instance, any new fields like a European host, like a .eu host, won't propagate and won't push through. And also, if you're an agency and you'll roll out lots of kind of recipes or automatic setups for Cookiebot or User-Centrics or OneTrust, you can't do it as easily if you don't use a recipe. So it's harder basically to clone. Here's an example of our recipe that's free. If you send me an email, I can grant you access to our template library, and you can kind of see that and hide the cookie banner and do a few other interesting things to improve the CMP setup. And yeah, basically try and avoid using custom HTML where you can. It's more likely a marketer or analyst would break something if they're using custom HTML. Template's harder to break. The other one, Google's now pushing templates as part of its setup. If you go into Google Ads and it then connects over to the Google tag, and you've got this option for set up Google consent mode. This is a fairly recent thing, and it now pulls in the CMP tags into Google Tag Manager, creates an account ID, and then adds them into GTM directly. Does do this kind of going off from GTag to GTM and then back to GTM, which is weird, but that's the way things are moving. So another reason why you want to use a template. The other one is, please don't use auto block. Do you know what auto block is? Okay, hopefully that means you're not using it. If you go to your website and view source and search for the word auto block, hopefully you don't see anything. The reason for that, auto block slows down the site. It's a really clunky, bad solution for categorizing cookies and tags, and it's just horrible from a development perspective. It's kind of like a quick fix. Much better to categorize tags within the CMP, do it properly. So don't use this, please. It's a horrible solution. The other one is don't cross the stream. So blocking rules came around before consent mode. So it's quite often you'll start with an account where you've got these blocking rules for functional analytics, targeting, etc. And then you need to move those over to the consent mode categories. So here's an example. We've got the default categories here, and then we've got a reject analytics blocking rule down here. So if you've got an instance like this won't work with consent mode because the blocking rule down here stops the denied ping from sending. So this is it's not going to upscale. You're going to miss out that 20%-ish. The other one is using the wrong event name, and this is quite common. So sometimes a J4 tag, for instance, might be on all pages, which is the default in GTM. What you actually need to do is pick the name that the CMP gives you. In this case, it's OneTrust updated. So you should be using that. If you don't use the correct one, you won't be able to read the consent settings in time, and thus you'll get a tag that's going to fire when it shouldn't fire, as in a compliance issue. The other one would be, again, on OneTrust here, sometimes an agency might pick the wrong field here. They might do a OneTrust loaded rather than OneTrust updated. Pick the right one. Again, if you use a recipe, you're less likely to make this mistake. And the other one is an industry problem. So GTM doesn't kind of have a default variable or a default event name for a consent updated or even a consent default event. So the CMPs all randomly pick a different name for it, which really makes things more complicated, especially if we're trying to change CMPs. Here we've got a cookie bot, a cookie consent update, OneTrust, a consent update, a cookie scripts one, etc. It's like the complete Wild West. So I wish it would be standardized. It would make things, as I said, a lot simpler, a lot easier there was just one way of doing it. Tag Rocket have come up with an interesting solution for BigCommerce where they actually look for a change in one of the 7 states and they cache it and they send an update based off that change. There are possible ways around this, but it's not like an ideal solution. Google just really should just update the DTag array for an update default to push out a data layer request, and that would solve it. The other one is not enabling default consent. So if you turn on the consent categories, like let's say you mark Facebook as storage, and you do that bit correctly, and then you forget to set a default, it's not going to work because the default must be present for the category to kick in. So it's like if you don't set a default, it's going to be completely broken and you won't realize. Make sure you set those defaults, and it's normally default first and then accept decline second. So you need to run them in that order. If you do have them in the wrong order, you may see this error in GTM preview mode. And also remember, if it's a CMP like OneTrust in this case, remember to turn it on in the tick box as well here. Otherwise, again, it's not going to work. You might turn it on in the interface and then forget to turn it on in the CMP, and it's like, well, why is it not working? Well, it's because you need to turn it on there as well. The other one, so this is a new feature that Google added in the last month or so regarding setting the default. So the old way of setting the defaults is this way here. This is your consent default and then these 7 categories. There's actually a new way to do it Google added. I don't know if anyone knew this. So drum roll, here you go. This is the G-tag settings to set default. You can actually now do it in the Google, the G-tag itself, without actually setting this inline or within GTM. The thing I would say about this though, for God's sake, don't use it. The reason for that is it creates a race condition, because especially if you're using GTM, it's going to say have a GA4 tag that fires with this default, but you might have had a Facebook tag or a TikTok or whatever that fires beforehand, and it's like that's through the door, that's bolted, and then the default fires, and it's just a massive compliance risk that Google have introduced by adding this feature. It's almost guaranteed that marketers are going to use it wrong. So, and then the other thing just to note, it does say select region on here, and it doesn't even have Europe. It just does like the whole of Europe, not like the EE, as in what it really needs is legal jurisdictions, not by country, but that's a second thing. The other one is getting the names wrong. So this is OneTrust community template. OneTrust, you'd think if you want to turn on the defaults within the OneTrust community template, it would be simple. Like you want to turn on ad storage, yeah? You want to enable it. That makes sense, doesn't it? Nope, you're completely wrong. What it actually says is, do you want to enable add region-specific defaults on by default? Well, I do want to turn it on, so that looks right, isn't it? On by default? Yeah, I'm activating it. Looks right? Nope. It's actually, you want it off by default. You want denied first. It's kind of like a double negative. I don't know why they did this. It's like just to confuse people. So just be careful with how some of the CMPs have set up their own templates and like not done a best practice themselves. Another one which I've seen on some big sites, if you're using these GeoIP denies for Europe as an example, this here doesn't work. So you might think, oh, it's all right, my compliance is all sorted, I've denied Europe down here, Germany, etc., etc. Security UK is Europe for the moment. Deny by default, we're all good, rest of world, they're granted. Not going to work. Any ideas why? Look at the screen. Any kind of... it's because the default takes precedence. It's like a fallback. It's a bit like a robot.txt allow and deny. You've got to do the deny first, then the allow and robot.txt. Identical problem. On here, it's the wrong way around. And it's all about the order. So here we've now got the EU list and then the default. This works. Because this executes first, then it falls back to the default. Cool. The other one is basic mode. So let's say you don't trigger the thresholds of basic mode or you're not allowed to use it. The category you pick in here is actually quite important. So if you're on, let's say, business and industry here, which has got an average conversion rate, this is from WordStream, of about 5%-ish. Let's say we changed that to other business activities, because it's like business, maybe. It's kind of like a 2% shift in average. It means you're going to get an uplift of 2% on all of your sessions and conversions by that change, if you're on basic mode. So actually changing the settings can actually shift the numbers. Now, I'm telling you this so if you're an agency and you, or a client and an agency have changed this, so you're aware of these sort of issues, but just make sure you pick the right category. It's very important if you're on basic mode and you haven't got modeling and the warning about modeling activated. It also just, you could even pick the lowest one on that list, jump to the highest, which is like a 2% to a 10%, and then you've got a plus 8% difference on that shift. But this is quite unethical, so I'm telling you about this, but be careful, because you should really get approval from the client if you're going to make this sort of change. Also, be careful about the healthcare category, because that disables all Google Ads remarketing via GA4. Cool. The other one is forgetting to categorize. Yikes. So Google are like, okay, 10% of global revenue fine for Google, us under Digital Marketing Act. Yikes, that's a lot of cash. I better add these by default, so I'm okay, as in Google is okay, because Google only really care about themselves. If it's Facebook or TikTok, they don't care. So these defaults are not set if it's not a Google tag. That's like a massive problem. You kind of assume that Google would be on your side, and they don't care. They're like, we give you the tool, it's up to you how you use it.
This is 30 seconds, mate.
Sure, okay. And also with call tracking, they've even forgot to set the default on this one, which is also a bit of a risk and compliance thing. I think it's because call tracking, hopefully they're going to introduce modeling in call tracking at some point. They maybe just forgot to set the default on there. The other one is Bing consent mode. This is now native in GTM. So you can actually just go into the native Bing template, tick these two boxes, and bang, you're going to activate modeling on Bing. How awesome is that? I don't know if anyone knew that this was in there. Cool, eh? You don't even need to use Simo's template to invoke it or activate it. This doesn't do clarity, that's a separate thing, but for standard Bing remarketing, it covers it.
Thank you.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.